So, my entitled mother wants to blackmail me. How does she go about doing this? She steals my heart medication, so this is what I do. So, this incident actually happened quite a few years ago, and I feel like I'm finally at a point where I can post about it. I'm hoping sharing it and hearing what you guys have to say about what happened will bring some measure of closure and catharsis. For some background, I now, 33-year-old, non-binary, assigned female at birth, am disabled. I was born with severe Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a genetic disorder that, among many other symptoms, affect pretty much every bodily system. Causes my joints to dislocate and sublux, partially dislocate, with very little prompting. I once dislocated my shoulder by flumping down onto my bed from a sitting position, too roughly. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 17, because EDS wasn't well recognized by most doctors back in the early 2000s. Having abused me in every possible sense for my entire childhood already, my extremely narcissistic alcoholic mother, the entitled parent in the story, immediately saw my diagnosis as a whole new set of ways she could hurt me. She would forcibly dislocate my joints as, quote, punishment for entirely imagined offenses, telling me no one would believe me if I told them she's done it, and she tells me I was, quote, too clumsy, which she'd already been branding me for as long as I could remember. Her entitlement was and is deeply rooted in every aspect of her personality. She would often stand over me booming, quote, as far as you're concerned, I am God. Everything under this roof is mine, my property, and that includes you, and everything in your room. You don't freaking breathe without my say-so. You bought it? Don't give a crap. It's mine. And there isn't a bloody thing you can do about it because I am God. And she did that sober. Yeah. So entitled she was basically delusional. My father was and remains a pathetic excuse for a parent that I genuinely almost forgot to mention him. He constantly enabled her abuse, convinced it was our fault she was abusing us, and actively prevented my younger sister and me from getting help. When I was 24 years old, I was finally able to move out. My sister having moved out 2 years earlier with the help and support of friends. I moved in with my BFF, but was still very much under my parents' control, psychologically. My mother would help me by picking up a particular heart medication from the hospital that was about 90 minutes away by bus, since I couldn't drive. She would always make a massive fuss about it, and what a huge favor she was doing for me, guilting me as much as she possibly could. At this point, I was so beaten down and small, I would apologize for everything. Like, literally preface pretty much everything. I would say this. Hi, I'm sorry, but... And end pretty much everything with, sorry again. I was a mess, and nearly a decade after escaping that hellhole, I'm honestly still rebuilding my sense of self. On the day of the incident, that's the focus of this story, so we'd arranged for my entitled mother to pick up my medicine, meet me at the local shopping mall where I'd be getting some grocery items to give the medicine and drive home. One of her favorite things to do has always been to make people wait for her, presumably because it gives her some sort of sense of power over others, so I knew to expect her to be late. She already yelled at me over the phone, and I had to be outside, standing at the curb in the car park when she pulled up, or she'd keep driving. Which, by the way, was not a bluff, because she's done that before just because I've been sitting on a bench a few feet back. Ugh, gosh forbid anyone keep her waiting. So, 10 minutes before the agreed upon time, I was standing at the curb, groceries bagged up and ready to go. As our meetup time passed, I had to sit down on the ground because it started to rain. I should add here that being out in the cold and rain sends my chronic pain through the roof and can leave me unable to use my hands for days. So I was already annoyed at the situation. But I was also terrified of this monster of a woman. When she was 20 minutes late, I sent her a text, which took me a while because of my hands hurting, asking how far away she was. I got a nasty reply, saying she was on her way and I'd better be standing at the curb when she got there. I replied, I'm sitting on the footpath in the rain, so please don't take long. Yeah, no reply. At 35 minutes late, I text her again. I said I'm cold, soaking wet, and in a ton of pain, asking where the hell she was and what's taking so long. It was very unusual for me to be so direct with her, by the way, but being out of their house and with the people who were working to build me back up has given me this new sense of boldness. And, by the way, I was in a lot of pain. I gave far less of a damn about the consequences than usual. I was trembling with anxiety as I sent the message, but it felt empowering. She called and screamed at me down the phone about how ungrateful I was, how she was going so far out of her way to do this massive favor for me, and that I'd be lucky if she showed up at all after I've spoken to her like that. I pointed out that the favor is somewhat negated if you cause the person harm by screwing them over in the process. She screamed some more abuse at me, told me I better be standing at the curb when she got there. That she was going to, quote, beat the living daylights out of me, then hung up the phone. We had 2 more rounds of this until she was over an hour late, and finally I was done. Something in me finally snapped and I was just like, duck it. After getting on the bus safely with my waterlogged shopping bags, I used speech-to-text to send her a final text message saying that I was done playing her ridiculous games and was taking the bus home. I told her it was completely unacceptable to demand her disabled, severely, chronically ill daughter stay out in the freezing rain for well over an hour, and that Dad would get my medicine from her and drop them off at my apartment. I'd already asked him and let him know about the situation, by the way. I was a blubbering mess of delirious agony and anxiety when I got home. My roommate had to take the next day off work to look after me. In the aftermath, my entitled mother refused to give my dad the medication for me, saying that if I wanted it, I would have to, quote, come back begging for her forgiveness for being such an ungrateful little beep. She had this whole rant about it, of course, going on and on about what awful, nasty little beep I was. Even added in some Ablis stuff about how they should have killed me at birth and saved themselves 2 decades of medical bills because, well, I did not deserve everything they've done in sacrifice for me. She literally demanded I show up in person, get down on my knees, and grovel. She thought she had total power over me by holding a crucial medication hostage. She said a bunch of stuff about how I'd better comply with her demands before being without medicine made me too sick to even get on my knees. Yeah, stuff like that. I wasn't getting them back at all. The most bizarre part was that she genuinely seemed to believe that I wronged her, and she was entitled not to only an apology, but to withhold my medicine in order to force one out of me, because she said she, quote, knew I'd never give her what she owed otherwise. Well, joke's on her. I went to the police station and got them to retrieve the obviously stolen medicine, but was told that because I'd given the pharmacy authorization to allow her to collect and sign, it was legally hers to keep, and there was nothing I could do. By the way, I live in Australia. I called the pharmacy, explained the whole situation to the extremely kind pharmacist, who was able to organize a new prescription with my specialist through the hospital, and I had a friend who worked nearby pick it up for me. In the meantime, my dad broke 24 years of consistent spinelessness and lied to my entitled mother to scare her. He got her to hand over those stolen meds, saying that I've gone to the police, but that he convinced me to hold off so he could give her a chance to hand them over. It worked, and I ended up stalked for an extra month. But the whole incident resulted in me finally cutting all contact with entitled mother. When he dropped off the meds, my dad tried to convince me to, quote, make peace with my mom for his sake, and said that by refusing to speak to her, I was being selfish because I know how hard it would to make things for him, since, quote, he had to live with her. Still riding high on the wave of boldness, I told him he was being selfish by expecting me to continue putting up with abuse, as he always did anytime I tried to stand up for myself. He got super nasty and vindictive, said some extremely hurtful, deeply personal things, then left. As of a few years ago, I've now cut contact with him as well. I'm finally completely free of both them and have a great relationship with my sister. Now that we're both adults, have a clear perspective on how our parents parentified me and pitted us against one another as children. I've genuinely awesome people all around me these days and still live with that same roommate. My dad was diagnosed with terminal illness a little while back. He doesn't have much time left, though I'm still not sure how I feel about that. He finally left mom too, who, after relying on him to manage her chaotic mess for over a decade, is utterly failing to fend for herself. She's well on her way towards ending up cold and alone, which is cathartic to know, to be honest. Pathologically entitled, abusive people just deserve to have the people they abuse leave them. It's that simple. Well, that was definitely one heck of an entitled mother story. Let's go ahead and read a couple comments. It makes me angry that some people have children with the intent to abuse them, and that nobody steps in to help. There should have been family, teachers, friends, etc., who could have spoken up and helped you. You were let down by everyone. I'm so glad you've escaped and have nothing further to do with these people who bring no joy into your life. Alright guys, so let me know what you think about that comment. Drop your opinions in the comment section below, and we're going to turn our attention to story number 2 that comes complete with an update. I'm a 44-year-old male. I want to read my daughter's diary to find out why she left us. My wife says that we should absolutely not. Trigger warning, this story includes death, and it's very sad and emotional. It's a crazy story, guys. Here it is. I'm a 44-year-old male. My daughter, who's 17, committed suicide 2 months ago. It was honestly a big shock, as she's never shown any signs that she wanted to take her life. My wife and I blame ourselves and wish that we could have done more. She was in therapy for something unrelated. She was very afraid and would panic at the sight of blood. So we thought that her feelings in general would be addressed during her sessions. We were always very supportive of her, asking her about her days or if she's having troubles, about anything when she's noticeably looking down. We only started cleaning out her room a week ago. I was going through her closet, and tucked at the very back was a small backpack with her diary in it. I really wanted to read it, because my daughter did not leave anything behind. Not a note saying why she did it. Nothing. So, I was hoping that maybe something in her diary would shine light as to why she did what she did. I brought the idea up to my wife, and she said absolutely not. Though she's not with us anymore, she still deserves the utmost respect. My son, he's 14, also wants to know why his sister left us, but doesn't think that reading her diary's the way to go about it. I don't know. I feel like we need closure. My family and her friends need closure. My wife cries herself to sleep every night, repeating that she wishes we could have done something different. I comfort her. My son obviously misses his sister, as they were very close. He misses her so much that sometimes we'd find him asleep by her door in the middle of the night. My daughter did not have any social media presence, but had a good amount of friends, and none of them knew why she did it. The diary's our last shot of giving everyone she knew the answers. Why? I know diaries are very intimate, and the last thing I wanted to do is disrespect her. My daughter. If I don't end up reading her diary, how will I find closure? How will my family move past this? Every day's filled with tears and many thoughts of why. Was it my wife and I's fault? We don't know, which is why I want to know. If it was us, I don't want to have us to make the same mistake with our only child left. I don't know exactly what I'm asking for, but anything's appreciated. It's been some time, but here's an update. First and foremost, thank you all so much for your condolences and for sharing your thoughts and experiences dealing with losing a loved one. Secondly, I'm sorry if this post isn't necessarily the neatest. I'm still at a loss for words. Basically, I'm a pathetic excuse of a father for not realizing that my son goes on here. I don't keep track of social media apps that he uses. He saw the original post where many of y'all were arguing and urging me to read my daughter's diary. My son did so behind our backs, and we only have came to find out when he lashed out, calling his sister selfish and all the names under the sun for doing what she did. My wife, on the other hand, is beyond pissed at my son for reading our daughter's diary. She said that our daughter's going to be mad at our family when, quote, she gets back, only to find out that one of us read it. I'm guessing she hasn't accepted the fact that she's gone and will never return. As for me and my wife, we have not read our daughter's diary, only our son did. Based on my son's reaction, I can assume that you guys were right. Her diary is filled with hatred, as if someone else wrote it. I don't know the contents of it, but I know how and who my daughter was, and her brother loved her for who she was, and now he can't stand it when his sister's name is mentioned. That was exactly what I was afraid of after him reading that diary. Our perspective of her would be completely different. My son is temporarily speaking with a family member who's a therapist, and we'll be switching him over to a different one hopefully by next week, to avoid conflict of interest, and as a family, we're now in contact with the counselor ourselves. I want to talk to my wife about getting her into therapy as well, as she still thinks our daughter's here. She's just away on a trip. That's what my wife calls it. But beyond that, still nothing much has changed. My wife still cries herself to sleep every night, and though my son very much is upset with his sister, we still find him cuddled up next to her door. And for me, nothing. Still empty and probably always will be. Which isn't fair to my son and wife, so I'll probably seek a therapist for myself as well. Plus, I know many marriages don't survive after the death of a child, so marriage counseling is something I want to bring up when it's appropriate. What about the diary? It's gone. Hidden well within our home. Hell, I may even forget where it's at years down the line, but I do know I want to read it when I'm ready. Whether that's with my wife or not. I want to know her struggles, read her fun times, if she's written any, and what made her do it. I know reading it won't give me closure, but it'll give me an insight of what she was going through, and let that be a lesson for me to be better for my son. Just to always be there whether he's feeling fine or not. Well, that's about it. My heart still physically hurts from the loss of my daughter and for the rest of my family, as they're also in much pain. Some of you guys might be expecting this update to be about the contents of the diary, but I'm choosing not to read it for a long time. And if my wife wants to, I won't stop her. But I do want her to tell her that she may not recognize her own daughter as my son did not. Only time will heal our wounds, and lots of therapy and hopefully support. Thank you. Thank you all for much of your thoughts and prayers. I can say for myself that it brought me a bit of comfort after this massive loss. So this was a very heartbreaking story. I want to know one question from you guys in the comment section or not. Would you A, read the diary, or B, no way? Let me know your thoughts on that. That's all the stories I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining in and listening. And as you know, Mr. Reddito is here absolutely every single day with a story and a video for you on this channel and my second channel, Mr. Reddito Stories. All right, guys, have a wonderful night. I'll see you tomorrow. The latest Mr. Reddito producer, Christine Billings. Thank you so much for the support.